Beneath the sun-baked plains and towering rock formations of Turkey lies a secret that defies belief, an entire underground world carved by human hands thousands of years ago. Picture this: vast cities hidden deep below the earth, sprawling across multiple levels, with tunnels snaking for miles, ventilation shafts reaching up to the surface, and chambers large enough to house thousands. This isn't the stuff of legend or fantasy, it's real. Welcome to the underground cities of Cappadocia, one of history's most baffling enigmas. Who built these labyrinthine sanctuaries? Why did entire communities vanish beneath the ground? And how did they remain hidden for so long, their existence whispered only in myths until modern explorers uncovered the truth? The landscape above is surreal enough: fairy chimneys dotting the horizon, caves hollowed into cliffs, and ancient churches etched into the rock. But beneath this otherworldly terrain lies something even more extraordinary. These aren't just simple shelters or temporary hideouts. These are fully functional cities, complete with stables, kitchens, wineries, and even places of worship, all concealed beneath layers of earth. The scale is staggering. Some estimates suggest these subterranean networks could have sheltered up to 20,000 people at once. Imagine the precision, the engineering prowess required to carve such a refuge without modern tools, to ensure air flowed freely, water was accessible, and enemies could be kept at bay. It's a testament to human ingenuity and desperation. What drove these ancient builders to abandon the sunlight and retreat into the depths? Was it invading armies, religious persecution, or something even more mysterious? The answers lie buried in the tunnels, waiting to be uncovered, and that's exactly what we're going to do together. Over the course of this video, we'll descend into the shadows of Cappadocia's underground cities, piecing together the clues left behind by those who lived and perhaps died within these stone walls. We'll explore the theories, the legends, and the startling evidence that challenges what we thought we knew about ancient civilizations. This isn't just a journey into the past. It's an invitation to step into one of history's greatest survival stories, to walk the same passages where whispers of the past still echo. So, are you ready to dig deeper? Let's begin. To understand how these underground cities became possible, we need to look at the very ground beneath Cappadocia, a landscape shaped by fire and time. Millions of years ago, volcanic eruptions blanketed this region in thick layers of ash, which over centuries compacted into a soft, porous rock called tuff. Unlike granite or limestone, tuff is surprisingly easy to carve, almost like sculpting hardened sand. That's why, with simple hand tools, ancient builders could chisel out entire cities beneath the earth, creating tunnels that twist like veins and chambers that stretch as wide as cathedrals. But Cappadocia's geology isn't just a footnote, it's the reason these hidden worlds exist at all. The same volcanic forces that created this malleable rock also sculpted the surface into those iconic fairy chimneys and honeycombed cliffs. It's as if the land itself invited people to carve into it, offering both shelter above and secrecy below. And because tuff is naturally insulating, these underground spaces stayed cool in blistering summers and warm during freezing winters, making them not just hideouts but livable, year-round refuges. Yet geography alone doesn't explain why Cappadocia became the epicenter of this subterranean phenomenon. This region sat at the heart of ancient trade routes, a crossroads where empires clashed and cultures collided. From the Hittites to the Persians, from Romans to early Christians, everyone who passed through left their mark and often their enemies in pursuit. Underground cities weren't just architectural marvels, they were survival tools. When armies swept across the plains, the soft rock that made Cappadocia vulnerable to invasion also made it perfect for disappearing. Imagine standing on the surface today amid rolling hills and vineyards with no hint of the labyrinth below. That's the genius of these cities. They turn the land's fragility into a fortress. While other civilizations built walls to keep threats out, Cappadocians dug down, using the earth itself as both shield and sanctuary. The rock that could crumble in their hands became their greatest defense, a silent, sprawling stronghold hidden in plain sight. For centuries, the underground cities of Cappadocia existed as little more than local legends whispered about by villagers but dismissed by outsiders as exaggerated tales or natural caves. That changed in the early 20th century when a French priest named Guillaume de Gerfagnan stumbled upon something extraordinary while documenting ancient Christian art in the region. As he explored the surface-level rock-cut churches, locals kept mentioning the cities below. Skeptical at first, he followed their directions to hidden entrances obscured by boulders or overgrown with vegetation. What he found shattered all expectations. These weren't just storage cellars or temporary shelters, as earlier travelers had assumed. Gerfagnan descended into vast networks of interconnected tunnels, each turn revealing staircases plunging deeper, elaborate ventilation systems, and chambers with ceilings so high they seemed to defy the weight of the earth above. His sketches and notes captured details that previous observers had missed. Grooves in doorways that once held rolling stone doors, intricate markings on walls that may have served as navigation aids, and even ancient graffiti hinting at life underground. The scale was unimaginable. Entire communities had lived here, not for days or weeks, but potentially generations. Yet Gerfagnan's discoveries were initially met with skepticism. Many scholars of his era clung to the idea that these were merely expanded storage caves, refusing to believe pre-modern societies could engineer such complexity. It wasn't until later expeditions mapped the cities systematically that the truth became undeniable. Teams crawled through narrow passages only to emerge into sprawling subterranean plazas, some large enough to hold hundreds. They found kitchens with soot-blackened ceilings, stables with tethering rings still embedded in walls, and even wineries with fermentation pits, proof that these weren't emergency hideouts but thriving, self-sufficient worlds. The most startling revelation: these cities weren't isolated. Explorers gradually realized that Cappadocia's underground sites formed a vast, linked network, with some tunnels stretching for miles between settlements. Early theorists had imagined a few disconnected caves, but the reality was a subterranean civilization, its existence carved in silence beneath the feet of empires. Each new discovery raised more questions. How did they coordinate such construction without written plans? What disasters or threats drove them to perfect this hidden way of life? The answers, much like the cities themselves, lay buried in layers of history, waiting for the right clues to bring them to light. What began as dismissed rumors became one of archaeology's most humbling lessons. Sometimes the greatest wonders aren't lost to time, they're hidden in plain sight, waiting for those willing to look deeper. Among all of Cappadocia's underground marvels, one stands out as the crown jewel Derinkuyu, descending 18 stories deep. That's over 200 feet straight down into the earth. This isn't just a city beneath the surface. It's a vertical fortress, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers so vast it could house 20,000 people for months on end. And here's what's truly astonishing. Every inch of it was carved by hand, without blueprints, without modern machinery, and without any margin for error. Picture standing at the top entrance, a narrow passage barely wide enough for a single person. As you descend, the sheer scale becomes overwhelming. Each level reveals something new. Stables carved near the surface to avoid hauling animals too deep, storage rooms stacked with ancient pottery, kitchens with blackened ceilings from centuries of fires. The deeper you go, the more ingenious the design becomes. Massive stone doors, each weighing up to a ton, could be rolled across passageways to seal off sections in an instant, a security system without metal or electricity. But the real engineering marvels are the 55-meter deep ventilation shafts, ensuring fresh air reached even the lowest levels, and the intricate water wells tapping into underground streams so residents never ran dry. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were precision-drilled lifelines angled perfectly to prevent contamination while hiding their locations from outsiders. Which raises the chilling question, what kind of threat could have driven people to build and live in such extreme depths? Was it the marauding armies of the Arab-Byzantine wars, forcing Christians underground to escape persecution, or something older, more mysterious? The volcanic rock holds no written records, only whispers in the architecture itself. Like the chapel on the 7th level, its crosses etched into stone, or the communal spaces suggesting a society that thrived in darkness. Derinkuyu isn't just a relic, it's a mirror. The deeper we dig into its passages, the more we see of ourselves, our ingenuity, our fears, and the lengths we'll go to survive. And perhaps that's the most haunting clue of all. Civilizations don't bury their cities unless they have no other choice. While Derinkuyu plunges deep into the earth with its monumental scale, its sister city Kaymaklı tells a different story, one of sprawling horizontal expansion rather than vertical ambition. Just 11 kilometers away, this underground maze spreads wide rather than deep, its 8 excavated levels revealing a carefully planned labyrinth where every tunnel and chamber served precise needs. Walking through Kaymaklı feels like navigating the arteries of a living organism. Narrower passages branch unexpectedly into communal spaces, stables open suddenly into wine presses, and small chapels emerge where you'd least expect them. What makes Kaymaklı distinct isn't just its layout, but the clues hidden in its design. The ceilings here are lower, the corridors tighter, some so slender you have to turn sideways to pass. This wasn't just about saving labor, it was strategic. Intruders unfamiliar with the maze would find themselves funneled into choke points, vulnerable to defenders who knew every turn. And unlike Derinkuyu's massive rolling stones, Kaymaklı relied on smaller, more frequent barriers, stone slabs that could be dropped quickly to seal sections off. These weren't just homes, they were traps waiting to be sprung. Yet within these confined spaces, life flourished. The very first level wasn't for people at all. It was dedicated entirely to livestock, with tethering rings and troughs carved directly into the rock. Early arrivals could stable animals without venturing deeper, keeping smells and noise away from living quarters. Further down, circular depressions in the floor reveal where grapes were crushed for wine, while smooth, soot-streaked niches mark kitchens where meals were prepared. The presence of wineries and storage rooms suggests Kaymaklı wasn't just a wartime refuge. It was a place where communities settled in for the long haul, preserving food, making wine, even worshipping in hidden chapels adorned with faint crosses. The most telling detail, ventilation shafts here don't plunge straight down like Derinkuyu's. They twist subtly, disguising their paths, a hint that secrecy mattered as much as airflow. Some scholars believe Kaymaklı served as a frontline outpost, its narrower tunnels allowing quicker movement between above-ground villages when danger approached. Others argue its design reflects a different era, built by earlier civilizations with distinct fears and priorities. Standing in one of Kaymaklı's dimly lit chambers, you realize these cities weren't copies of each other, they were adaptations. Where Derinkuyu prioritized depth and permanence, Kaymaklı embraced flexibility and deception. Together, they form a startling portrait of human resilience, two solutions to the same existential threat, carved from the same soft rock yet shaped by different hands, different minds, and perhaps different chapters of a story we're still piecing together. The underground cities of Cappadocia didn't just happen by accident, they were masterclasses in ancient engineering, solutions carved from desperation and brilliance. Take those massive rolling stone doors, for example. These weren't ordinary barriers, they were defensive marvels, carved from single blocks of volcanic rock. Each one weighed as much as a small car, yet they could be moved with startling ease. The secret: precision. Craftsmen shaped them into perfect cylinders, then fitted them into grooves so smooth that even a child could roll them shut. When invaders breached the tunnels, defenders could seal entire sections in seconds, creating impassable walls without hinges or locks. It's the same principle behind modern bank vaults, just carved with hand tools over 2,000 years earlier. Then there's the ventilation system, a labyrinth of shafts so carefully designed they put modern air circulation to shame. Engineers didn't just punch holes randomly, they calculated airflow like invisible architects. Some shafts stretched over 50 meters straight up to the surface, disguised as wells or hidden among natural rock formations. The genius wasn't just in their depth, it was in their placement. By angling shafts at specific intervals, they created natural drafts, drawing stale air out while pulling fresh oxygen downward. Even more impressive, the shafts were narrow enough to prevent enemy infiltration but wide enough to sustain thousands of people for months. Compare that to medieval castles where poor ventilation often made siege conditions unbearable. Cappadocia's builders solved problems Europe wouldn't face for another millennium, but perhaps the most startling innovation lies in the water systems. Instead of relying on surface wells that could be poisoned or blocked, they tapped into underground streams using gravity-fed channels. These weren't simple holes in the ground, they were carefully sloped tunnels, sometimes running hundreds of meters, directing water to central reservoirs without pumps or machinery. The design ensured a constant supply even during sieges, with overflow channels preventing floods. Some chambers even had filtration systems, using layers of porous rock to strain impurities. It's a level of hydraulic engineering that rivals ancient Rome's aqueducts, except these were hidden entirely from view, their existence known only to those who lived in the depths. What's truly humbling is realizing that these innovations didn't come from a single era. Archaeologists have found evidence of expansions and modifications across centuries, suggesting each generation refined the design. Rolling doors got smoother, ventilation shafts more precise, water channels more efficient. This wasn't just survival, it was a slow-motion revolution in underground living. And that's what fuels the biggest question of all: how much knowledge was lost when these cities were finally abandoned? The techniques here surpass many medieval technologies, hinting at a sophistication we're only beginning to understand. Were these ideas unique to Cappadocia, or did they represent a wider tradition of ancient engineering now buried by time? The stones don't give easy answers, but they whisper tantalizing clues. The true genius of Cappadocia's underground cities lies not just in their scale, but in how they transformed soft volcanic rock into an impenetrable defensive network. Every corridor, every doorway, every ventilation shaft doubled as a tactical advantage against invaders. Start with the entrances. Most were intentionally hidden, disguised as natural crevices or concealed beneath sliding stone slabs that blended seamlessly with the terrain. Some passageways were so narrow that intruders would have to crawl single file, making them easy targets for defenders waiting just beyond the bend. And if enemies somehow breached these choke points, they'd face a nightmarish labyrinth designed to disorient and entrap. But the cities didn't rely solely on confusion. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of deliberate booby traps, pits hidden beneath thin stone floors, tunnels that abruptly dead-ended into vertical drops, and even chambers rigged with counterweighted stones that could be triggered to collapse. The most chilling discovery: tunnel systems that connected multiple cities, allowing defenders to send messages or reinforcements underground without ever surfacing. These weren't just escape routes, they were clandestine highways, enabling coordinated resistance across miles of territory. Historical records hint at why such extreme measures were necessary. Cappadocia sat squarely in the path of invading Persian armies, Roman legions, and later Arab forces, each wave bringing devastation. During the Arab-Byzantine Wars, entire communities vanished underground for months at a time, emerging only when scouts confirmed the coast was clear. Some tunnels even bore scorch marks, suggesting defenders used smoke or fire to flush out intruders. What's startling is how these adaptations evolved over centuries. Early versions of the cities had simpler barriers, but later expansions reveal increasingly sophisticated traps and redundancies, proof that each invasion taught harsh lessons. The rolling stone doors, for example, began as rudimentary slabs before becoming precision-engineered cylinders. Ventilation shafts were redesigned to muffle sound, preventing echoes from betraying a city's location. These weren't just hiding places, they were fortresses inverted, turning the earth itself into both weapon and shield. And that raises a sobering thought. When survival hangs in the balance, human ingenuity doesn't just adapt, it reinvents the rules of warfare entirely. Among the many theories surrounding Cappadocia's underground cities, one of the most compelling centers on early Christians seeking refuge from persecution. The Byzantine era, with its waves of religious conflict, provides a vivid backdrop for this idea. Step into any of these subterranean chapels, often hidden deep beneath the surface, and you'll find faded frescoes of crosses, saints, and biblical scenes adorning the walls. These weren't just hastily scratched symbols, they were elaborate works of devotion, painstakingly painted by torchlight in spaces where worship had to be conducted in secret. But the evidence isn't as clear-cut as it seems. While some frescoes match Byzantine styles from the 7th to 10th centuries, others appear older or newer. A few underground chapels contain inscriptions in ancient Greek, while nearby tunnels bear markings that could predate Christianity entirely. This raises a critical question. Did early Christians build these cities from scratch, or did they repurpose existing underground networks carved by earlier civilizations? Historical records add another layer of intrigue. Byzantine texts describe secret assemblies of Christians hiding from Arab raids, and accounts of saints taking shelter in caves of stone. Yet none explicitly mention cities beneath the earth. Even more puzzling, some of the most elaborate underground chapels sit alongside chambers that clearly served non-religious functions: wineries, storage rooms, even makeshift prisons. Was this a place of pure refuge or a multifaceted survival hub adapted over generations? The contradictions don't end there. If persecution was the primary motivator, why build so deep? Some levels in cities like Derinkuyu descend far beyond what would be necessary to evade detection. And why the staggering scale, enough to house tens of thousands, when smaller hideouts would suffice? Perhaps the answer lies in the cyclical nature of Cappadocia's turmoil. Persecution wasn't a single event but a recurring threat, from Roman pagans to Islamic armies. Each wave may have driven communities deeper, expanding the cities like layers of an onion. What's undeniable is the faith etched into these stones. Whether as original architects or inheritors of older spaces, early Christians left an indelible mark. Their chapels, hidden beneath layers of rock and history, whisper of a people who worshipped in shadows, not out of fear but defiance. The frescoes, faded but unbroken, tell a story that's as much about resilience as it is about survival. And that's the haunting beauty of this theory. Even in darkness, they carved out spaces for light. While early Christian use of Cappadocia's underground cities is well documented, the origins of these subterranean labyrinths may stretch back much further, centuries before Christianity even existed. Scattered throughout the deepest tunnels, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts that defy the Byzantine timeline. Crude stone tools unlike Christian implements, pottery fragments with geometric patterns matching Hittite designs from over 3,000 years ago, and even markings resembling ancient Anatolian scripts. These aren't random finds dropped by later inhabitants. They're embedded in the bedrock itself, suggesting the first cuts into Cappadocia's soft, tough stone began long before persecution drove Christians underground. The Hittites, who ruled this region during the Bronze Age, were master engineers, constructing sprawling surface cities with sophisticated water systems and fortified walls. But why would they dig downward? One theory points to their reverence for the underworld. Hittite texts describe rituals performed in subterranean chambers of the gods, and their mythology speaks of sacred spaces where the living could commune with ancestors. Could the earliest tunnels have been ceremonial, later repurposed for survival? Supporting this, some of the deepest chambers in Derinkuyu contain unusual niches and alcoves that align with Hittite temple architecture, spaces too meticulously carved to be mere storage rooms. Then there's the Phrygian connection. When the Hittite Empire collapsed around 1200 BCE, the Phrygians emerged as a dominant force in Anatolia. Known for their rock-cut monuments like the legendary Midas tomb, they had both the skill and the incentive to expand underground. Cappadocia sat on the frontier of Phrygian territory, a buffer zone vulnerable to invasions from the east. Tunnels may have begun as hidden trade routes or emergency shelters during Assyrian raids. Evidence lies in the oldest ventilation shafts, which show distinctive Phrygian masonry techniques, angled cuts that differ markedly from later Byzantine work. The most tantalizing clue, a handful of Bronze Age bronze tools discovered wedged in tunnel walls, their blades worn smooth from carving rock. These weren't lost items, they were abandoned mid-construction as if workers fled suddenly. Radiocarbon dating places them around 900 BC, centuries before recorded Christian presence. Even more telling, some tunnels bear scoring marks made by these tools, running beneath later Christian carvings like ghostly palimpsests. What emerges is a story of continuous reinvention. Like a canvas painted over by generations, Cappadocia's underground cities weren't built in one era but adapted across millennia. Each civilization left its mark. Hittite chambers became Phrygian hideouts, which in turn became Christian sanctuaries. The stones remember more than any single history, whispering of a past far older and far more complex than we once imagined. And that raises a humbling possibility. We may never know who first dared to carve into the dark. Life underground wasn't just about hiding, it was about thriving. Picture a bustling subterranean economy where every carved chamber served a purpose. Livestock pens lined the upper levels, their walls still bearing the grooves of tethering rings and the faint scent of animals long gone. Farmers didn't abandon their herds when they descended. They brought them along, ensuring a steady supply of milk, wool, and meat. The ingenuity didn't stop there. Ventilation shafts doubled as waste disposal channels, keeping the air fresh even as animals lived mere floors above human quarters. Then there were the winemaking facilities, perhaps the most surprising discovery. Deep within these underground labyrinths, archaeologists uncovered circular pits carved into the rock, stained dark from grape residue. These weren't just storage caves, they were active production sites. Crushed grapes would ferment in these hollows, their juice draining into collection channels. The cool, stable temperatures of the underground made ideal conditions for aging wine, a luxury that defied the grim reality of life in hiding. Some chambers even contained clay amphorae sealed with resin, suggesting trade with surface communities. How did these exchanges happen? Likely under cover of darkness, through hidden side tunnels or disguised surface entrances known only to trusted traders. Communal kitchens tell another story of resilience. Blackened ceilings and soot-streaked walls reveal where fires burned constantly, their smoke funneled through cleverly designed chimneys that disguised their origin. Grain storage rooms held barley and wheat, their capacity hinting at careful planning for sieges that could last months. But the most telling detail: the sheer number of grinding stones found in these spaces. Bread wasn't just sustenance here, it was a ritual, a reminder of normalcy in an otherwise claustrophobic existence. Trade with the surface was a dangerous necessity. While some goods could be produced underground, wine, wool, simple tools, others like salt, metals, or medicinal herbs required outside contact. Historians speculate about nighttime markets held in hidden valleys, or barter systems conducted through intermediary tunnels where goods were exchanged without direct interaction. The presence of foreign pottery shards in deeper levels suggests these networks stretched further than anyone imagined. What emerges isn't just a story of survival, but of adaptation. These communities didn't merely endure underground, they built a shadow civilization complete with its own economy, its own rhythms, its own unbreakable will to persist. The stones don't just whisper of fear, they echo with the clatter of looms, the gurgle of fermenting wine, the murmur of negotiations conducted in darkness. And that's the most remarkable truth of all. Even in the depths, humanity refused to stop living. Imagine waking each morning not to sunlight, but to the muted glow of oil lamps flickering against rough-hewn walls. In Cappadocia's underground cities, entire families spent months, sometimes years, living in this twilight world. Sleeping quarters carved into the soft rock were often stacked vertically like drawers in a cabinet, with narrow ledges serving as beds. Privacy was scarce. Entire families might share a single chamber, their belongings tucked into alcoves chiseled into the walls. Yet there was order to this subterranean existence. Communal kitchens bustled with activity as women ground grain on stone slabs, while children played in designated alcoves where their laughter wouldn't carry too far and betray the city's location. The psychological toll of this confinement must have been immense. Without natural light or the rhythm of seasons, time became something measured in lamp oil and meal cycles. Accounts from nearby cave-dwelling communities, like those in neighboring Garim, describe rituals to stave off despair, storytelling circles where elders spun tales under the glow of torches, or communal singing sessions to break the oppressive silence. In Derinkuyu, archaeologists found carved game boards scratched into flat stones, evidence of families passing hours with strategy games. Other chambers bear the faint outlines of handprints pressed into the walls, perhaps a way for individuals to say, "I was here," in a world where identity could feel erased by darkness. Food storage was a constant preoccupation. Jars of pickled vegetables, sacks of grain sealed with clay, and dried meats hung from ceiling hooks filled specially designed pantries. The air in these rooms stayed cool and dry, preserving supplies for lean times. But the most telling detail, the presence of small, carefully tended herb gardens near ventilation shafts. Using reflected light and moisture from the air, families grew mint, thyme, and other hardy plants not just for food, but for the scent of greenery in a world of stone. The social hierarchy underground mirrored surface life, but with stark adaptations. Elders and community leaders occupied chambers near ventilation shafts where the air was freshest, while young couples and newcomers slept in deeper, stuffier levels. Disputes were settled in designated judgment chambers, where the confined space may have discouraged raised voices. In one such room in Kaymaklı, a stone seat stands elevated slightly above others, likely where a village elder presided. The lack of natural light didn't erase social structures, it intensified them, compressing human interactions into tighter, more volatile spaces. What's most haunting are the traces of attempts to mimic surface life. In some chambers, red ochre pigments were used to paint windows on walls, illusory portals to a world above. Other rooms feature carefully arranged stones suggesting symbolic hearths, their fires never lit. These weren't just practical adaptations, they were psychological lifelines, ways to trick the mind into remembering sunlight and open air. Modern studies of long-term confinement, from polar research stations to submarines, show how quickly humans crave sensory variety. Yet these ancient communities endured conditions far more extreme for far longer, with nothing but handmade comforts to anchor their sanity. The resilience of these underground dwellers becomes even more remarkable when contrasted with accounts from later cave-dwelling communities in the region. Ottoman-era records describe mountain villagers retreating to caves during wartime, noting how quickly tempers flared in darkness, how children's growth stunted without sunlight, how the elderly often succumbed to stone sickness, a folk term for the depression that came with confinement. Yet in Cappadocia's deeper cities, evidence suggests generations lived and died underground without abandoning their hidden world. Skeletal remains show signs of vitamin D deficiency, but also strong musculature from navigating steep tunnels daily. The difference may lie in preparation. These cities weren't improvised shelters, but meticulously planned environments where every human need, from nutrition to mental health, was accounted for in stone. Perhaps the most poignant discovery came from a mid-level chamber in Derinkuyu, where archaeologists uncovered a child's sandal, tiny and worn, beside a set of miniature grinding stones. Here, in the eternal dimness, children didn't just survive, they learned trades, played games, and left marks on walls that whisper across centuries. The sandal's imprint, preserved in volcanic dust, tells a story no fresco or artifact can, of small feet that never ran through open fields, yet found ways to dance in the dark. The underground cities of Cappadocia don't just belong to archaeology, they live in the realm of myth, woven into the stories of civilizations that once called this landscape home. Long before historians began piecing together the facts, the Hittites spoke of a sacred underworld called Derinkuyu, a labyrinthine domain where gods and ancestors dwelled beneath the earth. Their texts describe rituals performed in stone bellies, where priests communed with spirits through hidden passages. Could these tales have been inspired by early encounters with Cappadocia's subterranean voids? Some scholars believe the Hittites didn't just mythologize the underground, they may have helped carve its first chambers, turning spiritual visions into tangible refuge. Centuries later, early Christian communities added their own layer of legend. Stories spread of St. George slaying a dragon not on the surface but in caverns beneath Cappadocia, a symbolic battle against pagan forces lurking below. Even more striking are the accounts of the Seven Sleepers, a group of persecuted youth said to have hidden in a cave for centuries, protected by divine intervention. These tales mirror the lived reality of Christians fleeing Roman soldiers, their chapels hidden like secrets in the rock. The line between faith and survival blurs here. Did these myths arise to explain the cities, or did the existence of the cities shape the myths themselves? Perhaps the most haunting connection lies in Zoroastrian beliefs brought by Persian invaders. They spoke of Vara, an underground ark built to survive a world-ending winter, a concept shockingly similar to Cappadocia's self-sufficient cities. The parallels are uncanny: sealed stone doors, ventilation shafts like celestial conduits, and even the placement of livestock near entrances. Whether by coincidence or cultural exchange, these shared motifs suggest something profound. When faced with catastrophe, human imagination often retreats to the same primal sanctuary, the earth itself. Yet the most tantalizing clues come from local folklore passed down through generations. Villagers near Derinkuyu still whisper of the ones who went below, a people so wary of the surface world they chose eternal darkness. Some tales describe hidden tunnels stretching to the Mediterranean or buried libraries holding lost knowledge. Others speak of a great collapse that sealed entire communities beneath the rock, their voices echoing as faint warnings. These aren't just ghost stories, they're cultural memories, frayed by time but rooted in real events. What emerges is a tapestry of belief and pragmatism. The underground cities may have begun as practical shelters, but over centuries they became anchors for collective imagination. Each civilization projected its fears and hopes onto these stone walls, transforming engineering feats into sacred narratives. And that raises a provocative thought. Perhaps myths aren't just stories we tell about the world, but tools for survival, as essential as rolling stone doors or ventilation shafts. After all, what's more powerful than a legend that teaches people how to vanish into the earth and live to tell the tale? The underground cities of Cappadocia achieved something modern architects still strive for: perfect climate control without mechanical systems. Deep beneath the surface, temperatures held steady at around 13 degrees Celsius year-round, a life-saving constant whether desert winds scorched the land above or winter snows buried it. This wasn't accidental. The builders harnessed geothermal principles we're only now fully understanding. Natural heat rising from the Earth's core met the insulating properties of tough rock, creating a stable microclimate. Ventilation shafts acted like thermal regulators, drawing cool air downward in summer while allowing warmer air to rise in winter. The result, a self-regulating system that required no fuel, no maintenance, just brilliant passive design. Compare this to other ancient underground marvels. The Nabateans carved petrous tombs to harness canyon breezes, while the Berbers of North Africa designed Matmota's pit homes to trap cool air. But Cappadocia's cities went further. Explorers discovered vertical shafts acting like ancient geothermal heat exchangers, with some tunnels angling precisely to capture or deflect underground warmth. In Derinkuyu's deepest levels, certain chambers stayed slightly warmer, likely spaces designated for the elderly or infirm. The builders even accounted for humidity. Porous tuff absorbed excess moisture, preventing the dampness that plagued other subterranean sites like Scotland's Neolithic earth houses. What's truly remarkable is how these principles echo modern green architecture. The cities functioned like a natural version of today's ground source heat pumps, using the Earth's thermal mass instead of electricity. Some ventilation shafts even created convection currents similar to passive stack ventilation in contemporary buildings. This wasn't just survival engineering, it was comfort engineering. Pottery fragments found in living quarters show evidence of oils and herbs, suggesting residents countered the dryness typical of underground spaces with aromatic solutions. The climate control extended to food storage as well. Designated chambers near geothermal vents served as natural refrigerators, keeping dairy and meat fresh for weeks. Other rooms positioned near airflow intersections maintained perfect conditions for fermenting wine or drying grains. Nearby above-ground settlements relied on seasonal preservation methods, but underground time seemed to stand still. Perhaps most telling are the differences between Cappadocia and less sophisticated underground sites. In Turkey's neighboring regions, early cave dwellings suffered from extreme temperature swings and mold. Cappadocia's builders didn't just dig holes, they sculpted a breathable, temperate world. The precision suggests generations of accumulated knowledge, trial and error etched into the very rock. When modern engineers modeled these systems, they found airflow patterns matching computer-optimized designs. Somehow, without thermometers or blueprints, these ancient architects created what amounts to an underground oasis, a testament to human ingenuity's ability to harmonize with nature's rhythms. At some point, the labyrinthine corridors of Cappadocia's underground cities fell silent. The rolling stone doors ceased moving, the ventilation shafts no longer carried the murmurs of daily life, and the chapels stood dark without flickering candlelight. The question of why these vast subterranean communities were abandoned remains one of history's lingering puzzles. Unlike cities destroyed by war or natural disaster, these spaces weren't ruined. They were simply left behind, their exits carefully sealed, as if their inhabitants intended to return but never did. One prevailing theory points to the ebb and flow of religious persecution. As the Byzantine Empire stabilized and Christianity became dominant, the need for hidden refuges diminished. Surface churches flourished, their domes rising proudly under open skies rather than buried in rock. But this explanation doesn't quite fit the timeline. Some underground chapels show signs of use well into the medieval period, suggesting abandonment wasn't a single event but a slow, uneven process. If safety was the only factor, why did some communities cling to the depths while others embraced the surface? Then there's the seismic argument. Cappadocia sits atop active fault lines, and earthquakes have reshaped its landscape for millennia. Evidence of collapsed tunnels exists, particularly in Kaymaklı, where entire sections appear to have been crushed mid-use. Yet most underground cities show no signs of catastrophic damage, just orderly exits. Could tremors have disrupted water sources or ventilation systems, making habitation untenable? Without clear layers of destruction in the archaeological record, this theory remains speculative. Perhaps the most compelling explanation lies in the changing nature of warfare. By the Middle Ages, advances in fortification technology made surface castles more defensible than underground labyrinths. Why spend months in darkness when towering walls and catapults could deter invaders? Some historians point to the rise of Seljuk and Ottoman empires, whose military strategies favored open battles over protracted sieges. The underground cities, once impregnable, may have become obsolete relics of an older, more desperate era. But the abandonment leaves unsettling gaps. Where did the populations go? No mass migrations are recorded in nearby surface settlements. And why leave behind usable tools, jars of grain, even livestock bones, as if life underground was interrupted mid-meal? The most haunting clue comes from Derinkuyu's lowest levels, where archaeologists found a single child's toy, a carved wooden horse placed deliberately in a niche as if awaiting retrieval. The truth may be messier than any single theory. These cities likely emptied for different reasons in different eras. Some communities resurfaced when threats passed, others after disasters, while a few might have held on until the last lamp burned out. What's certain is that the silence wasn't failure, it was a choice. The stones whisper not of defeat, but of resilience finally rewarded with sunlight. And that makes the mystery all the more poignant. The greatest testament to these cities' success isn't that they were needed, but that one day they weren't. For centuries, the underground cities of Cappadocia remained little more than local secrets known to nearby villagers, but dismissed by outsiders as exaggerated legends. That changed dramatically in the early 20th century when a curious mix of archaeologists, adventurers, and accidental discoveries pulled these subterranean marvels into the global spotlight. The turning point came in 1963 when a resident of Derinkuyu renovating his home discovered a mysterious hole behind a wall. As he cleared the rubble, he uncovered a passageway that led not just to a single chamber, but to an entire hidden city. Word spread quickly, attracting researchers who soon realized these weren't isolated caves, but part of a vast interconnected network. The 1970s and 80s saw a wave of systematic excavations that revealed the true scale of Cappadocia's underground world. Teams armed with modern equipment mapped passageways stretching for miles, uncovering new cities previously known only in folklore. Archaeologists were stunned to find intact oil lamps still resting in niches, millstones left mid-grind, and even remnants of last meals evidence that these spaces had been abandoned suddenly, preserved in eerie stillness. As findings were published in academic journals, international media took notice. Magazine spreads and documentary films showcased the surreal images of cathedral-like chambers carved into volcanic rock, sparking a surge of public fascination. UNESCO designation of Cappadocia as a World Heritage Site in 1985 cemented its status as a cultural treasure, drawing tourists from every corner of the globe. Visitors flocked to descend through the same narrow passages ancient residents once used, their hands brushing against walls worn smooth by generations. But fame came at a cost. The soft, tough rock that made these cities possible also makes them fragile. Every footstep, every touch, even the moisture from human breath accelerates erosion. In some chambers, centuries-old carvings have been worn nearly smooth by decades of tourist traffic. Preservation efforts now walk a delicate line between access and conservation. Some passageways have been reinforced with discrete steel supports, while sensitive areas are closed to the public entirely. Scientists monitor humidity levels and airflow, knowing that even minor changes can destabilize the delicate equilibrium that's preserved these spaces for millennia. Meanwhile, modern technology offers new ways to study the cities without physical intrusion. Laser scans create precise 3D maps, revealing hidden chambers without disturbing a single grain of volcanic dust. The paradox of Cappadocia's underground cities is that their greatest threat is also their salvation, human curiosity. Tourism funds preservation but risks destruction, a balance as precarious as the stone doors that once sealed these tunnels. What's certain is that these hidden worlds, once forgotten, will never vanish into obscurity again. They stand now not just as archaeological wonders, but as testaments to humanity's relentless drive to explore, understand, and protect the echoes of our shared past. Despite the astonishing scale of Cappadocia's underground cities, what visitors see today is merely the tip of the iceberg. Less than 10% of these subterranean labyrinths are accessible to the public. The rest remain sealed off, either for safety or because they simply haven't been fully explored. Behind roped-off passages and collapsed tunnels lie entire sections untouched for centuries, their secrets preserved in darkness. Local guides whisper about chambers so deep and vast they defy the official maps, with rumors of tunnels stretching all the way to the Mediterranean or connecting to other underground sites across Anatolia. Whether myth or reality, these stories hint at a hidden geography still waiting to be uncovered. Recent technological breakthroughs are beginning to peel back the layers of mystery. Archaeologists using LiDAR, a laser scanning technology that can map hidden structures beneath the Earth's surface, have detected anomalies suggesting entire undiscovered networks. In 2018, scans near Derinkuyu revealed what appear to be man-made voids extending far beyond the known city limits, some descending to depths that would rival the tallest skyscrapers. Even more intriguing are the hints of branching tunnels that don't match any documented pathways, raising the possibility of connections between sites previously thought to be independent. The challenges of exploring these spaces are immense. Many passages are too unstable for human entry, their ceilings held up by nothing but centuries of compacted dust. Others are flooded or blocked by deliberate collapses, perhaps sealed by ancient residents to thwart invaders or protect sacred spaces. In one tantalizing case, a thermal camera detected an airflow pattern in Kaymaklı suggesting a hidden chamber behind a nondescript wall, but ground-penetrating radar couldn't determine its size or purpose. What could lie in these uncharted depths? Some researchers speculate about ceremonial spaces or elite quarters hidden in the deepest levels. Others suggest utilitarian areas, massive granaries, cisterns, or even workshops that would have supported prolonged sieges. There are darker theories too, unmarked burial chambers for those who didn't survive underground, or prisons for enemies trapped in the labyrinth. The most compelling clue comes from a 19th century account by a French explorer who claimed to have found a tunnel lined with human bones, though its location was lost to time. The truth is, every new discovery complicates the story. Last year, a team using muon tomography, a technique that images dense structures with cosmic rays, identified a vertical shaft in Derinkuyu that drops abruptly beyond the lowest mapped level. Its purpose is unclear, but its dimensions suggest it wasn't for ventilation or water. Could it be an escape route, a spiritual passage, or something else entirely? Until technology allows safe exploration, these questions linger, reminding us that the full story of Cappadocia's underground world remains half-told. For now, the closed sections exist as ghost layers beneath our feet, their silence punctuated only by the occasional creak of settling rock. Each scan, each radar echo, peels back another fragment of the mystery, revealing not just empty chambers but the fingerprints of decisions made in desperation or faith. The deeper we look, the more we realize how much of this subterranean civilization still whispers just beyond reach. Beneath the dust and echoes of Cappadocia's underground cities, a more speculative mystery hums, one that lives not in academic journals, but in the whispered corners of conspiracy forums and late-night documentaries. Could these labyrinthine tunnels, with their uncanny precision and staggering scale, have been built with otherworldly help, or do they connect to grander, more enigmatic civilizations lost to time like Atlantis? While mainstream archaeology dismisses these notions as fantasy, the theories persist, fueled by the sheer impossibility of what ancient humans achieved beneath the earth. Take the extraterrestrial angle first. Some point to the ventilation shafts, their precise angles and consistent diameters, as evidence of laser-like tools beyond Bronze Age capabilities. Others highlight the rolling stone doors, their perfect cylindrical shapes echoing machinery we'd associate with advanced engineering. But here's the catch: every one of these mysteries has a human explanation. The Hittites and Phrygians were master stoneworkers, capable of carving intricate reliefs and monumental architecture above ground. Why wouldn't they apply that same skill below? And those ventilation shafts, they align perfectly with known Hittite surveying techniques using plumb bobs and water levels. The real marvel isn't alien intervention, it's how ancient engineers adapted surface world knowledge to the dark. Then there's the Atlantis connection. Proponents of this theory point to Plato's description of a sophisticated civilization that sank beneath the earth, a phrase some interpret literally. They imagine Cappadocia as a surviving fragment of that lost world, its tunnels part of a global network of subterranean refuges, but the timeline doesn't hold. Plato placed Atlantis's fall around 9000 BCE, while Cappadocia's underground construction dates to at least 2000 BCE at the earliest. More tellingly, the architectural styles match known Anatolian cultures, not some hypothetical advanced society. What's fascinating isn't the theories themselves, but why they endure. These cities defy our assumptions about ancient technology, and when confronted with the extraordinary, some minds leap to the supernatural rather than credit human ingenuity. Yet the truth is far more compelling. Cappadocia's underground worlds weren't gifted by aliens or Atlanteans, they were carved by calloused hands, designed through trial and error, and expanded over generations. The real conspiracy: how history underestimates the brilliance of our ancestors. That said, the fringe theories reveal something important. The human brain craves patterns, and in Cappadocia's shadowy tunnels, it's easy to see what you want to see. A ventilation shaft becomes a celestial alignment. A storage niche turns into an alien artifact. But peel back the myths, and you'll find fingerprints in the rock, literal ones, left by laborers smoothing walls with palm-sized stones. The most profound message of these cities isn't about lost civilizations or cosmic visitors. It's about ordinary people achieving the extraordinary, not with magic or alien tech, but with persistence, creativity, and the universal will to survive. While Cappadocia's underground cities astonish with their scale, they're far from the only subterranean marvels humanity has carved from stone. Take Malta's Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, a labyrinthine burial complex dating back over 5,000 years. This UNESCO-listed site descends 3 levels into the earth, its chambers adorned with intricate spiral carvings and ochre paintings that shimmer in torchlight. But unlike Cappadocia's sprawling living spaces, the Hypogeum served exclusively as a sacred necropolis, a place where the living came only to honor the dead. The air here feels heavier, thick with the weight of rituals performed millennia ago, where Cappadocia's tunnels buzz with the imagined sounds of daily life, children laughing, looms clacking. Malta's silence speaks of funerary chants and whispered prayers. Then there's China's Dixia Cheng, the underground city beneath modern Beijing. Built primarily during the Cold War as a nuclear shelter, its narrow corridors stretch over 30 square kilometers, capable of housing up to 1 million people. On the surface, Dixia Cheng shares Cappadocia's ethos of survival, but the contrasts are stark. Constructed with concrete and steel in the 1970s, it lacks the organic feel of hand-carved tuff. Where Cappadocia's residents adapted to darkness with oil lamps and reflective surfaces, Dixia Cheng's fluorescent lights and ventilation fans scream 20th century pragmatism. This isn't a place where generations lived. It's a contingency plan, frozen in time like a locked fallout bunker. What makes Cappadocia truly singular isn't just its age or size, but its duality as both refuge and home. The Turkish cities weren't temporary shelters or single-purpose sites, they were ecosystems. In Derinkuyu, you'll find baptismal fonts carved beside wine presses, chapels sharing walls with livestock pens. This blending of sacred and mundane, of survival and routine, exists nowhere else underground on Earth. Malta's hypogeum reveres death, Dixia Cheng fears annihilation, but Cappadocia celebrates life's stubborn persistence. Even the geology sets it apart. While Malta's Globigerina limestone crumbles easily and Beijing's bedrock required dynamite, Cappadocia's tuff offered the Goldilocks zone of workability, soft enough to carve by hand yet stable enough to hold cavernous ceilings. That unique balance allowed innovations like the 55-meter ventilation shafts or multi-ton rolling doors, features impossible in softer stone or harder granite. Perhaps the most telling difference lies in abandonment. Malta's hypogeum was sealed reverently, its last offerings placed with care. Dixia Cheng was never truly inhabited, its bedsheet still wrapped in plastic. But walk Cappadocia's tunnels and you'll sense lives interrupted, a grinding stone left mid-rotation, a cooking pot perched on cold embers. These cities weren't closed, they were paused, as if their builders always meant to return. That lingering humanity, etched into every soot-blackened ceiling and worn stair, is what makes Cappadocia's underground world not just an archaeological wonder, but a mirror held up to our deepest instincts to protect, to endure, and when necessary, to vanish without a trace. The question of whether Cappadocia's underground cities were permanently inhabited or only occupied during emergencies has divided archaeologists for decades. On one side, scholars point to the sheer depth of Derinkuyu and Kaymaklı 18 stories in some areas as evidence of long-term settlement. Why carve schools, wineries, and even chapels if these spaces were merely temporary shelters? The presence of animal pens and grain storage rooms suggests communities prepared for extended stays, not just hasty retreats. But skeptics counter that no civilization would willingly spend generations in near-total darkness. They argue the cities functioned like bunkers, occupied only during invasions or natural disasters before residents returned to the surface. The debate grows murkier when examining carbon dating results from organic materials found in the tunnels. Charcoal samples from Derinkuyu's deepest levels date back to the 8th century BCE, aligning with Phrygian occupation, while higher chambers yield Byzantine-era Christian artifacts from the 7th century CE. This 1,000-year gap implies sporadic use rather than continuous habitation. Yet some researchers challenge this interpretation, noting that newer settlements often built atop older ones, skewing the timeline. A grain jar found in Kaymaklı contained seeds dating to both the 5th century BCE and the 10th century CE. Proof: some argue that different groups reused these spaces across millennia without abandoning them entirely. Another controversy centers on the city's primary purpose. Were they monastic retreats, military strongholds, or something else entirely? Proponents of the monastic theory highlight the prevalence of chapels and baptismal fonts, particularly in Derinkuyu's middle levels. Early Christian texts describe ascetics seeking solitude in caves, and the hidden chapels, some adorned with crosses and biblical frescoes, could have served persecuted believers. But military historians point to the city's defensive features: rolling stone doors, choke points, and even what appear to be arrow slits carved into tunnel walls. The presence of communal kitchens and water systems supports the idea of large groups sheltering together, not just solitary monks. The most provocative theory comes from a minority of scholars who propose these cities were neither purely religious nor military, but multifunctional. In times of peace, they might have served as storage hubs or even pilgrimage sites, with only certain levels occupied. During crises, entire populations could retreat downward, repurposing chapels as meeting halls and wineries as barracks. This flexibility would explain why some chambers show signs of repeated modification. Walls widened, ceilings heightened, as needs changed across centuries. What's undeniable is that these cities defy simple categorization. The same tunnel that might have housed a monk's cell in one era could have stored siege provisions in another. Carbon dating can tell us when, but not precisely why or how these spaces were used. Perhaps the truth lies in the rock itself, which bears the marks of countless hands: Hittite, Phrygian, Byzantine, each leaving their imprint without erasing what came before. These tunnels weren't designed for a single purpose, but for whatever survival demanded, and that adaptability may be their greatest mystery of all. Surviving underground wasn't just about carving space, it was about mastering the mechanics of life in the dark. Take food storage, where Cappadocia's residents turned volcanic ash into a preservation tool. Workers packed dried apricots, figs, and grains into clay jars, then buried them in ash-rich chambers where the mineral's natural desiccant properties sucked moisture from the air. Meat was cured with salt from nearby lake tuffs, hung near ventilation shafts to catch the steady drafts that prevented spoilage. Archaeologists have even uncovered pits lined with crushed limestone, a primitive but effective antibacterial barrier for root vegetables. These weren't makeshift solutions, they were refined techniques honed over generations to stretch scarce resources through years of confinement. Waste management reveals equal ingenuity. Unlike medieval castles where filth accumulated in toxic piles, Cappadocia's cities funneled human and animal waste through narrow chutes into deep limestone cisterns. The same porous rock that allowed air circulation also absorbed liquids, while solid waste dried into compact bricks that could be safely burned for fuel. In Derinkuyu's third level, a latrine system features grooves carved to direct urine into separate collection channels, an ancient nod to sanitation efficiency that wouldn't be matched in European cities for centuries. Avoiding detection required even more creativity. Smoke from cooking fires was channeled through maze-like ventilation shafts that dissipated it across multiple surface exits, making plumes indistinguishable from natural steam rising from Cappadocia's geothermal vents. Nighttime food production became routine, with grinding stones muffled by woolen blankets to dampen the telltale crunch of grain. Some tunnels feature whisper chambers, oval rooms where sentries could overhear surface conversations through acoustic amplification, their curved walls funneling distant voices like primitive surveillance devices. The parallels to Cold War bunkers are uncanny. Both eras relied on multi-layered security. Just as Derinkuyu's residents used rolling stone doors to compartmentalize sections, 20th century nuclear shelters featured blast doors to contain radiation leaks. Each system prioritized air filtration where ancient builders angled shafts to avoid enemy detection. Modern engineers developed HEPA filters to block radioactive particles. Even the psychological strategies align. Cappadocia's wineries and chapels mirror Cold War rec rooms and libraries, both designed to maintain morale during indefinite confinement. Yet one critical difference emerges. Where Cold War bunkers stockpiled canned goods and water drums, Cappadocians cultivated self-sufficiency. Grape seeds found in fermentation pits show evidence of selective breeding for higher yields in low light. Storage chambers contain not just food, but the tools to produce more sickles for harvesting underground fungi, spindle walls for turning cave-dwelling spider silk into thread. This wasn't just survival planning, it was an entire subsistence ecosystem carved into rock. The lesson: ancient engineers didn't just prepare for disaster, they engineered resilience into the very walls around them. The walls of Cappadocia's underground chapels tell stories without words, their surfaces etched with symbols that have endured centuries of silence. Crosses appear most frequently, some simple and unadorned, others intricately braided with vines or enclosed in circles, a style unique to early Byzantine Christianity. These weren't just religious markers, they were acts of defiance. In a time when Christian worship was punishable by death, carving a cross into stone was both a prayer and a proclamation, a way to claim sacred space in the darkness. Some crosses bear faint traces of red ochre, suggesting they were once painted to glow like embers in torchlight, a beacon for the faithful navigating the labyrinth. Among the most enigmatic symbols are the fish motifs, often scratched near water reservoirs or baptismal fonts. Early Christians used the fish, Greek ichthys, as a covert identifier, its acronym standing for Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. But in Cappadocia's context, the fish may have held dual meaning. Hydroengineers note their placement near water channels, theorizing they served as practical markers for maintenance access points. A spiritual symbol doubling as utilitarian signage. It's a testament to how seamlessly the sacred and practical intertwined in these underground worlds. Geometric patterns offer even deeper mysteries. Spirals carved near ventilation shafts mirror those found in Hittite sun symbols, hinting at older cosmological beliefs woven into Christian iconography. Zigzag lines along staircases resemble ancient Anatolian water signifiers, possibly guiding residents to hidden springs. Most haunting are the handprints pressed into soft tuff near chapel entrances, some adult, some startlingly small. Were they blessings, ownership marks, or simply the human urge to say, "I was here"? Then there are the anomalies. In Derinkuyu's 7th-level chapel, a fresco depicts not just saints, but a strange, wheel-like object with radiating spokes. Some claim it's a stylized halo, while conspiracy theorists whisper of ancient astronaut imagery. Archaeologists counter with a simpler explanation, a Sol Invictus symbol borrowed from Roman sun worship, repurposed by converts. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a blend of influences from cultures that crossed paths in Cappadocia's volatile history. What emerges from these carvings isn't a single narrative, but a palimpsest of faith and survival. A cross near a grain store might bless the harvest, while fish etched by a well honor both Christ and the laborer who kept water flowing. Even the simplest line carries weight when carved by hands that feared the sky. These symbols weren't just decorations, they were maps, prayers, and silent protests, each stroke a refusal to let darkness erase identity. And that's the real revelation, not what the marks say, but that they exist at all. In a world where survival demanded invisibility, someone still risked light and time to say, "We are here, we remember." For all their brilliance, the builders of Cappadocia's underground cities weren't perfect, and their mistakes tell us just as much as their successes. In the northern reaches of Derinkuyu, a collapsed tunnel lies half buried in rubble, its ceiling fractured where the tough stone thinned unexpectedly. This wasn't accidental. Core samples reveal the builders misjudged the rock's density, carving blindly into a weak vein. The result, a passageway that crumpled under its own weight, sealing off an entire wing of the city. Ironically, this failure offers archaeologists a rare snapshot of construction techniques. The debris field shows how workers layered stone supports in emergency repairs, stacking volcanic rocks like makeshift buttresses, a desperate fix that held just long enough for evacuation. Other miscalculations are subtler. In Kaymaklı's 3rd level, a ventilation shaft angles abruptly sideways, its smooth walls suddenly jagged. Scratches along the deviation suggest tools slipping as workers hit a pocket of harder basalt, forcing them to reroute mid-dig. This mistake preserved something extraordinary, the original chalk markings of the shaft's intended path, still visible on the ceiling like ghostly blueprints. Modern engineers have analyzed these lines, marveling at how closely they match computational fluid dynamics models for optimal airflow. The builders clearly understood the principles, they just lacked the tools to execute flawlessly every time. Then there's the haunting case of the drowning chamber. Deep beneath Nevşehir, excavators uncovered a vast space filled with centuries of silt, its walls water stained halfway to the ceiling. At first glance, it seemed like a failed reservoir, but the truth was more revealing. The chamber sat directly beneath an ancient stream bed, invisible from the surface. When seasonal rains came, water seeped through porous rock, flooding the space. Instead of abandoning it, the builders adapted. Grooves in the walls show where they installed a primitive filtration system, layers of packed wool and charcoal to purify the water for drinking. What began as a hydrogeological misjudgment became an accidental innovation, one that later informed the sophisticated cisterns of Byzantine Constantinople. Perhaps the most telling failures are the abandoned tunnels, dozens of them, scattered across Cappadocia like frozen moments of indecision. Some end abruptly at impassable rock layers, others spiral uselessly before terminating in dead ends. These aren't collapsed passages, they're unchosen paths, the physical remnants of trial and error. Archaeologists have mapped them carefully, noting how newer tunnels often curve to avoid these pitfalls, as if later builders learned from their predecessors' missteps. These imperfections humanize the ancient engineers, reminding us that their genius wasn't innate. It was earned through generations of effort, error, and adaptation. Every collapsed ceiling and flooded corridor whispers the same lesson. Survival underground wasn't about avoiding mistakes, but about learning to outthink them. And in that sense, these so-called failures might be the most honest history books we have. Centuries after their construction, Cappadocia's underground tunnels still hum with activity, not as wartime hideouts, but as vital spaces woven into modern daily life. Walk through any village near Derinkuyu or Kaymaklı, and you'll find locals using ancient chambers as natural refrigerators, their stable temperatures perfect for storing cheeses, preserves, and seasonal harvests. In Avanos, a family-run winery ages its vintages in a 2,000-year-old cellar, where the rock's porous surface regulates humidity so precisely that each bottle develops a unique minerality. The stone remembers, one winemaker told me, running a hand over walls blackened by centuries of torch smoke. It gives the wine a taste of history. For tourists craving more than a glimpse into this subterranean world, the region offers an unforgettable overnight experience. Several boutique hotels have converted sections of the tunnels into guest suites, blending ancient architecture with modern comforts. Imagine sleeping under a vaulted tuff ceiling, where the air stays a perfect 16 degrees Celsius even in midsummer, or bathing in a cave-side pool fed by natural springs. One hotel in Garim preserves original winemaking niches as nightstands and leaves ventilation shafts uncovered, so guests fall asleep to the same faint breezes that once nourished entire communities. Yet these adaptations come with challenges. Conservationists carefully monitor humidity levels to prevent erosion from breath and body heat, while historians ensure renovations don't erase ancient carvings. Some tunnels remain off-limits, their delicate ecosystems preserved for study. But where balance is struck, the past and present coexist beautifully, proof that Cappadocia's underground cities aren't relics, but living spaces still shaping the rhythms of human life. Whether sheltering wheels of aging goat cheese or travelers seeking connection to history, these tunnels continue their original purpose, sustaining life, just in ways their builders never imagined. Beneath Cappadocia's already mapped labyrinth, a quiet revolution is unfolding, one powered not by shovels, but by beams of light and radio waves. Teams from Istanbul Technical University are currently sweeping the region with ground-penetrating radar, a technology that peers through solid rock like an X-ray. Their latest scans reveal something astonishing. What we've uncovered so far might be less than a quarter of the true subterranean network. The radar has detected hollow spaces extending far beyond Derinkuyu and Kaymaklı, tracing patterns that suggest a sprawling underground highway system. One particularly tantalizing anomaly runs 20 meters beneath the modern town of Nevşehir, a tunnel wide enough for 3 people to walk abreast, with branching paths that align perfectly with known entry points in neighboring cities. But the real game changer is 3D photogrammetry. Archaeologists are now stitching together thousands of high-resolution images to create digital twins of the underground cities, mapping every chisel mark and soot stain with millimeter precision. This isn't just about preservation, it's about decoding construction secrets. The models reveal tool grooves that match Bronze Age implements in some tunnels, while others show the distinctive scoring of Byzantine-era chisels. Patterns emerge ventilation shafts that follow natural fault lines, chambers positioned to maximize structural integrity, proof that ancient engineers leveraged geology like modern architects use city software. Then there's the rumor-fueling expedition funding the Great Connection. Local folklore speaks of a master tunnel linking all major underground sites, sealed during some forgotten crisis. Last year, muon tomography, a technique that tracks cosmic particles passing through rock, detected a low-density corridor running northeast from Derinkuyu. It's too linear to be a natural formation, yet no physical entrance has been found. Some speculate it's buried beneath a deliberate collapse, perhaps triggered to trap invaders or contain some long-lost threat. What keeps researchers awake at night are the smaller, more perplexing voids. Scans show honeycombed clusters of rooms no human could enter, spaces barely wider than a loaf of bread. Were these ancient ventilation ducts, storage niches, or something more enigmatic? One theory suggests they're acoustic resonators, designed to amplify whispers across vast distances for communication. Another posits they're spiritual chambers, their narrow confines meant to symbolize rebirth passages. The most startling discovery might be what's missing. Despite mapping thousands of chambers, archaeologists have found almost no latrines beyond those in Derinkuyu. Either these cities had sanitation systems far beyond what we've uncovered, or their inhabitants developed customs we don't yet understand. Every answer unravels 3 new questions, and that's the thrill of Cappadocia today. The deeper we look, the more we realize how much remains hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right technology or the right mind to decipher its secrets. After centuries of exploration and study, Cappadocia's underground cities remain shrouded in unanswered questions. Who were the first hands to carve these labyrinths? Were they Hittite priests seeking communion with the underworld, Phrygian refugees fleeing invaders, or early Christians desperate for sanctuary? The rock holds no inscriptions, no royal decrees, only the silent testimony of tools, marks, and soot stains. The deeper we dig into history, the more we realize these tunnels weren't built for a single purpose, but adapted across millennia, layer upon layer, by civilizations facing unimaginable threats. What terrors drove them? Underground persecution, war, or something lost to time? The absence of record speaks volumes. These weren't just hiding places, they were acts of defiance against annihilation. Yet the greatest mystery might still lie ahead. For all we've uncovered, radar scans suggest 80% of this subterranean world remains unexplored. What undiscovered chambers wait beneath Nevşehir's modern streets? Could the legendary Great Connection tunnel, whispered about in local folklore, truly link these cities like beads on a hidden necklace? And what of the anomalous voids too narrow for human spaces that defy explanation? The answers aren't just academic. They're a mirror to humanity's unshakable will to survive, even when the sky itself becomes enemy territory. If these walls could talk, they'd tell a story far richer than any single theory. That's why Cappadocia still calls not just to archaeologists, but to anyone who's ever wondered what they'd sacrifice for survival. Walk these tunnels yourself and you'll feel it, the cool breath of ancient ventilation shafts, the weight of rolling stone doors, the eerie hush of chapels where light hasn't touched frescoes for 1,000 years. Or dive into research where new technologies peel back secrets faster than ever. But be warned, the more you learn, the more the questions multiply. Because down here in the dark, history isn't finished writing itself, and somewhere beneath your feet, in a chamber not yet opened, the next revelation waits.